It's Patrick Hutzel from Intensive Care at Home, where we provide tailor-made solutions for long-term ventilated adults and children with tracheostomies and otherwise medically complex patients by improving their quality of life, and where we also provide tailor-made solutions to hospitals and intensive care units, reducing the cost of an ICU bed by 50% whilst providing quality care. In last week's blog, I shared information about a new service we are providing, which is support coordination and complex or specialist support coordination. You can check out last week's blog by clicking on the link below this video. In this week's blog, I want to talk to our many families who have their loved one in intensive care. And today's blog post is about 5 things you can do right now to get your loved one home and out of ICU or pediatric ICU if your loved one is long-term ventilated. Many families in intensive care come to us when their loved one is stuck in intensive care or on long-term weaning units with long-term ventilation and tracheostomy. They simply want to take their loved one home, which makes perfect sense. We can help our clients fast, and we are very nimble and flexible when it comes to taking adults and children home from intensive care, which is our area of expertise. We know from experience that sometimes patients have been in ICU or long-term weaning units for up to 18 months or even 2 years before they can finally go home. Know that there is light at the end of the tunnel if you can contact us, as we can help you fast. Here are 5 things you can do right now to get your loved one home on a ventilator with a specialist service like ours, Intensive Care at Home. The first thing you can do is expect good things and have positive expectations. I know that when you have a family member in ICU or in pediatric ICU or in a long-term weaning unit with your loved one on a ventilator with tracheostomy or non-invasive ventilation such as BiPAP or CPAP, it is incredibly difficult to have a positive outlook and expect good things to happen. It is, however, not optional. You will need to train your mind to get to that positive outlook at all times, no matter how bleak the outlook and no matter how slim the odds. A positive attitude can move mountains, and this is true for your situation as well. This is probably the most important aspect in this situation, and you need to develop a positive mental attitude, period. Number 2. Get supporting documentation. A lot of ICUs or pediatric ICUs or long-term ventilation weaning units are bound by rules and regulations. They are overly bureaucratic and highly political. Therefore, they often forget what's really in the best interest of patients and their families. All you often need is a letter to support your request for 24 hours home nursing care with ICU and pediatric ICU nurses, because that's the gold standard and best practice. The evidence is there, and we have been providing evidence-based practice ever since we've been operational. Here are the home mechanical ventilation guidelines, where research confirms that going home with ICU and pediatric ICU nurses is the gold standard, rather than taking up an expensive ICU or pediatric ICU bed. So go and check out those home mechanical ventilation guidelines. I put a link below this video. So get your doctor's letters in order to request 24 hours home nursing care for ventilation with tracheostomy or CPAP or BiPAP non-invasive ventilation. Those letters of recommendation have a lot of weight when it comes to dealing with funding organizations. Furthermore, you can read our case studies as supporting information as well. Our case studies are showcasing how we send ICU and pediatric ICU nurses into the home improve quality of life for our clients and their families and cut the cost of an ICU bed by 50%. Again, I put a link to our case studies below this video. And if you're watching this on YouTube, just click on the link below this video. That'll get you to our website where you can read the blog post. The third thing you can do is you need to know and understand the cost structure in ICU or in pediatric ICU and hospitals and use it to your advantage. Keeping your loved one in ICU or pediatric ICU or in long-term weaning units is very, very expensive, financially as well as emotionally. I don't need to tell you about the emotional toll or the roller coaster that you're on. You already know it inside out. However, you need to be aware of the massive cost a long-term stay in ICU, pediatric ICU, or in a long-term weaning unit has, and use it to your advantage. An ICU or a pediatric ICU bed costs around $5,000 per bed day. Intensive care at home costs around 50% or less. Therefore, intensive care at home provides a win-win situation for all stakeholders. We reduce the cost of the most expensive bed in a hospital, the ICU or the pediatric ICU bed, by approximately 50%. We help you improve your and your loved one's quality of life, and we also help the ICU and pediatric ICU to free up a bed that's in demand, that's very precious and obviously very expensive. It all makes sense. The fourth thing you can do is to push the right buttons. Most families who are in a similar situation to you are scared and intimidated by the system. You will, however, need to be fearless if you want to get results that benefit you and your loved one on a ventilator. Sometimes it helps to go public with getting your loved one home on ventilation with tracheostomy, or also with non-invasive ventilation such as BiPAP or CPAP. The media and other outlets can often help in getting your story on the radar and help you achieve your goals. The next thing you can do is talk to us. Another very important factor in order to get your loved one out of ICU or pediatric ICU or out of a long-term weaning unit fast is to talk to us. We have many years of experience when it comes to providing intensive care at home services, when it comes to long-term ventilation with tracheostomy or non-invasive ventilation such as BiPAP or CPAP. We also understand and know how to operate in this highly political and bureaucratic environment and get you funding. We truly understand the situation that you and your loved one are in, and we have solutions for it. Our contacts, network, and understanding in the industry are second to none, and they're wide and deep and will be advantageous for you and your loved one. Contact us today so we can help you fast. So if you want to find out how we can help you to get your loved one out of intensive care or out of a long-term weaning unit, contact us at patrick@intensivecareathome.com. That's Patrick, P-A-T-R-I-K, @intensivecareathome.com, or call us on one of the numbers on the top of the website. Also, have a look at our career section if you are an intensive care or a pediatric intensive care nurse. We are currently hiring intensive care nurses for clients in the Melbourne metropolitan area and in South Gippsland. We are an NDIS, TAC and DVA approved community service provider in Australia. Thank you for tuning into this week's blog, and I'll see you again next week in another update. This is Patrick Hutzel from Intensive Care at Home, and I'll see you again next week in another update.